How long have you been playing Simba now?
A little over 2 years.
Can we just talk about how insane your story is?
You think about the show and you're like, oh, it's a Disney show. It's going to be just easy and fun and lighthearted and all these things. But then you realize and you walk through what the story of Simba is really saying.
In this episode, we're thrilled to welcome the incredibly talented Darian Sanders. Darian has taken the musical theater world by storm with his captivating portrayal of Simba in the national tour of The Lion King. From the heart of Kentucky, Darian's story reads like a script from a Hollywood movie. His journey to the stage was anything but ordinary, discovered overnight and catapulted into Broadway in what can only be described as a twist of fate. Darian's path is one of pure talent and undeniable passion. Whether it's playing Jesus in Jesus Christ Superstar, Seaweed in Hairspray, or leading worship across the country, his range and depth as a performer are truly remarkable. Beyond the stage, Darian's personal life as a dedicated husband and father adds an inspiring layer to his story. Today, we dive deep into Darian's unique journey, exploring how his upbringing in a big family and his experiences with drum corps to church music shaped him as an artist. We'll discuss his approach to iconic roles, his thoughts on training and creativity, and how his personal life influences his performance. So storytellers, let's get ready to be inspired as we welcome the exceptional Darian Sanders to our studio. This episode was brought to you in partnership with Little Black Tux. Little Black Tux is my go-to when I need a timeless look. Whether I'm speaking on a film panel, walking a red carpet, or need a bold, sophisticated look for a photo shoot, Little Black Tux has me covered. Little Black Tux isn't just a clothing company, they're a company with a story, a strong why. And you know I love a good story. They're breaking boundaries and creating clothing that empowers women with versatile, upscale options. I love my Little Black Tux, and I know you will too. I mean, I had to, Darian.
Hey, I'm here for it.
It's my favorite memory from childhood, and I think for so many of our listeners, probably theirs too. What an epic role to get to embody. How long have you been playing Simba now?
A little over 2 years.
Wow.
Yes.
So all around the nation for a little over 2 years. We want to start a little bit with this amazing story of how you were discovered. Now you play Simba all across the nation.
Yes.
But can you walk us through what happened the day that you sang the national anthem and how you were feeling and where you were at that time? Were you already acting before?
I was not. No,
Not at all?
Not at all.
Not regional theater? Nothing.
No desire to do it. I played the trumpet. That's what took me to college. And so I played in an orchestra one time for the Music Man for a high school production. That's the only theater life that I had been a part of.
And we're going to get into your background, but you're an amazing singer. I'm just going to set the stage for everyone. And you go to sing the national anthem at a UK, University of Kentucky game.
Yes.
And what happens next?
Huge rivalry game between UK and U of L, in-state rivals. And my now manager was at the game. And she went back to New York and was talking to one of her clients, which happened to be Matilda on Broadway. And Matilda and her mom were really good friends of mine. And she was like, there's this young black kid that was singing the national anthem, described me, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh yeah, that's Darian. Connected us, and then she said...
Wait, hold on. So she... Run that back again?
Yeah.
What was the connection to your mother?
So she, my manager, Peggy Stamps,
Yes.
She was in Kentucky at the basketball game, and she went to New York and was talking to her client. And her client was Matilda on Broadway.
Got it.
Yes. And so Matilda and Matilda's mom, they went to my church. And so then they connected us that way.
The actor who played Matilda and her
Yes.
mom went to your church. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And so they connected us, and she was like, hey,
Wait. They went to your church in Kentucky.
They went to my church in Kentucky.
This is so crazy. What serendipity. So she goes back to New York.
Yes.
She talks to this little girl's mom who plays Matilda on Broadway.
Yes.
And that little girl's mom is like, oh, we go to church with them in Kentucky?
That's our worship leader from Kentucky.
Wow. What?
Yeah. Insanely crazy. And so she was like, hey, have you ever thought about theater? And I was like, not at all. Like, I'm not a performer. I don't act. I don't dance. I sing in church. And she was like, well, there's something about you. There's this spark. There's this it factor.
Wow.
That is for the stage. And she was like, all right, would you think about doing it? And I was like, all right, let's see what this looks like.
Wait, so you get this call and like what's going through your head?
It was actually, it was a while ago. So it was a Facebook message.
Oh.
And she was like, hey, would love to connect with you. There's this production that we do in the summers at the University of Kentucky called A Grand Night for Singing. It's like a Broadway review. It's like 40 to 60 different songs. It's like fast paced, just going song to song to song. And it's like all these different musicals. It gives you a taste of Broadway, and we would love for you to be in it. And so that's kind of where I started, and that's where the bug hit me. And I have been thrilled ever since.
How does a bastard, orphan, son of a whore and a Scotsman dropped in the middle?
What did that feel like? Just getting that call or that Facebook message?
Yeah, no, it was a little overwhelming. I would say my story continually has this process of other people seeing things in me that I didn't really see in myself or didn't see was
That's beautiful.
available and impossible. And so it's happened since I was a little kid, but for me to be an adult at this factor in this stage in life, it was like, oh, well, you could do this. And as we all know as adults, before the pandemic happened, everyone's like, oh, no, you do this and this is your lane and this is where you stay. And so to just say, okay, I'm going to shift from being a worship pastor in a church to, okay, now I'm going to be on Broadway. Everyone's like, are you crazy? Are you crazy? You insane? Like, how can you just do this all of a sudden?
No, man, that's serendipity.
There
That
it
is purpose.
Yes.
That is another sign from another world. That is amazing. Let's take people back now.
Okay.
And let's share what your life was like growing up to that point or getting to that point. I know that you grew up in a really big family. For me, I have 2 younger sisters, and I spent a lot of my childhood, we're both from the Midwest. I spent a lot of my childhood, though, abroad in India, and I spent a lot of time, my parents have or my mom rather, she grew up on a coffee and pepper plantation in the middle of nowhere, India. And so my imagination, a lot of stuff that you see going into my story, has to do with me being the oldest child and spending time on my own and just imagining these insane worlds. And I think that very naturally led into all the things I do in the arts. Paint a picture for us in Kentucky. You are hanging out as a kid. You got this big family. How does that shape you as an artist? How did that contribute to you as an artist?
Yeah, I'm one of 8. They call
8?
me. I'm one of 8. I
Wow.
know. They call me the knee baby. So I was the number 6 child. I was the baby for 7 years, and then there are twins after me. So my little brother and my little sister, and so I lived in this world of all one big family. My mom and my dad, and 8 of us together, all growing up together, but being the baby for 7 years, it was like 2 different families because we had the 6 of us at first, and then the other 2 came. And so it was just a process of, I was the baby. And we make fun of it all the time when we take family pictures.
What's a knee baby?
That's what they say. A knee baby is, hey, I'm the baby for this long of time, and then all of a sudden other people come.
Got it.
So it's almost like 2 separate families, if you want to say. It's like an inside joke between us as families, but as a family.
So as one of the younger children of 8, like what is your childhood like? What do you think and how do you think that led into, what was to come?
I would say watching my older siblings was a huge portion because all of them were musical. They were all in band and they all played instruments. And so I would go nonstop to rehearsals or performances or concerts. But then also like in the home life at home, when we're on a Saturday morning, we wake up and we clean, or we're watching TV and we watch MTV or BET, or you watch these full Michael Jackson videos that used to be 15 minutes long for one music video, and you would watch it, and then all of a sudden you would get together as a family and like we would sit there and dance in the living room or the family room or do something. Like music was always a part of what we did and who we were. Growing up, my mom and my dad, believers. And so having gospel music playing while we're cooking or cleaning Saturday morning or Sunday morning or going to church and singing together, like all of these things happened. I remember vividly one moment, and it was crazy. MC Hammer video was on, and I just remember all of us standing in the living room, like doing the hammer time, like left and right. And so vivid memories like that, I think, shaped my love for music, but also shaped this vision and this dream inside without being able to say like, oh, this is what I want to do with my life. It was, hey, this is fun. This is exciting. This is something that could potentially like bring me life.
Yeah. For me, it was really a language, a love language, because I grew up, I'm a third culture kid or a multicultural kid or a first generation American, whatever we want to call ourselves. Yeah. And really story was the one place where I felt at home because it crossed all those boundaries. And so my sister and I used to wake up early and we would take chapatis or rotis and we would roll it up and eat it with pickle because it's the only thing I can make. And then we would watch an hour of television before my parents woke up because we weren't allowed watching once they were up. And then we would spend the rest of the day performing whatever we saw on TV.
Yes.
So I feel that. I feel like, what about the Midwest though? Like growing up the Midwest in Kentucky, did that in any way affect and shape? Because I know for me, like being around nothing, a lot of times is where a lot of imagination and also honing a musical ability comes from, because you need something to entertain you.
Absolutely, something to do. So I would say sports and music were the two things that we did. So that kept us busy, but also like going outside and playing and doing all those things and dreaming and imagining and playing kickball and finding friends in the neighborhood, friends at school, all of those things. I think it played into the fact of the matter of, no, I've never really had any formal training with anything, but man, I've always dreamed and imagined and had to come up and had to make something out of nothing, whether it be musical or whether it be artistry in another way.
When was the first time that you sang?
I don't vividly remember it, but I heard stories about when I was younger and singing at different points in time at like the library there used to be a show called Star Search. And so they had like a Star Search for Kentucky at the public library. And I sang for that. The things that I do remember is I've sang the national anthem most of my life. Mm-hmm. I never considered myself a performer, but I also remember my sisters all played basketball. And so I have a love for women's basketball. And so that's one of the things I remember being in middle school and going to their games and singing the national anthem for their games.
That's amazing. I remember going to those games and listening to the people who sang in the Midwest, and they're so talented. And so just the fact that like that was your honing ground is such an interesting part of your story, in my opinion. I know, like for me, very early on, I knew, kind of what I wanted to do, but then I ignored it for many years. So you think about childhood and like when you're a kid, and sometimes you have these moments of just like, oh, this is something I'm good at, but then the world kind of speaks at you and says, yes, maybe this isn't something for you. So I know you've discussed and you just mentioned that like other people saw this brilliance in you, but do you remember like a time as a kid where you had a moment where you were like, I really love, like this could be. For me, I used to talk to the posters on my walls because I knew they were all going to be my friends. I literally was like, this is what I'm doing. This is where I'm going. And like, these are all my buddies. Yes. And my mom thought I was upset. And I had to stay up to watch every award show because I was doing my homework.
Yeah.
I told my mom, I had like a presentation, like, this is my homework.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Did you have a childhood moment you remember like that?
I remember watching TV with my siblings. And like I had one sister that loved NSYNC, one sister that loved Backstreet Boys, one sister that loved Brandy, and another sister that loved Monica. Whitney was always playing. It was always a thing. And so for me, it was the wanting to be a performer, but wanting to also like travel and do that. Not ever thinking that it could happen, but just saying like these, like there are kids doing this and adults are watching these kids, like it's a possibility. Like they went from Mickey Mouse Club to all of a sudden now they're touring around the country, putting on concerts everywhere. And so to think and to say like, oh man, I could do this. Yeah. But then also realizing
you're in Kentucky.
I'm in Kentucky. Yeah. Like how am I going to make that happen? What's that going to look like? Not thinking and imagining, Justin Timberlake's from Tennessee. And now look at him, look what he's doing. Look at all the things.
I think that's so interesting to share with people because I do think we all have this moment as kids where we know exactly our purpose and then we get lost and what society kind of indoctrinates on us as what is possible. And so it's brilliant to hear that you had a moment like that.
Yes.
I want to talk a little bit about the shaping of you as a musician through your storytelling. I know that you started in, I want to make sure I don't mess this up, but Phantom Regiment, right? And that's that was your band experience. And then you shifted to church music before this whole miraculous event occurred. Can you talk a little bit about that background or growing up on and learning from band, and then how that shift happened to music and how it really has shaped the way you approach performance?
Very much so, because it's super intricate, and it is the foundation of where I came from and what I do and how I do what I do. I started playing the trumpet in the 4th grade. That took me to college. So I played elementary, middle school, high school, and then I got a full ride scholarship to the University of Kentucky. I wanted to be a high school band director. I've always wanted to be a teacher of some sort. My mom and my dad were both teachers. It's in our blood. I have siblings that are teachers. It's something that I just love to do. I love to hear and see that light bulb go off. Now, we shift from being in college, and while I was in college, I auditioned for Phantom Regiment, Drum and Bugle Corps based out of Rockford, Illinois. For those that don't know what drum corps is, think of it as like a professional marching band. You have
formations.
All the things. But in terms of level-wise, like you have high school, college, then NBA. You have high school, college, then MLB or NFL. The drum corps is basically the top tier of marching band, if you want to think of it that way. But in there, it's so intricate. There's so many parts. There's so many things that go on that being in that helped shape both my ability as a musician. It pushed me to be a better musician, but also it pushed me to be a better performer, because there's this huge storytelling portion with drum corps.
Yes.
And specifically the drum corps that I was a part of between 2005 and 2008, both when I was in it from 05 to 07, and then when I taught it in 08, it was this shifting and shaping of, hey, we're going to tell a story. So in 05, we're going to tell a story about Rhapsody, Gershwin, and this solo gentleman in the show, and how this intricate weaves all the way through. And then we're going to, in 2006, tell a story about Faust. And so it was like, how do you tell this story from a football field to an audience and make it portray?
Do you have images at that period of your life that are like coming up in your brain as you create these stories? I know a lot of times for me, like even as a child, when I heard music or when we performed for dance or whatever, like I had a very vivid imagination of what that was. You're portraying these great people.
Very much so. Because you get to this point of, man, sometimes you're portraying an individual or a person, and then other times it's an object or a feeling or a thing. So how do you portray a bird, or how do you portray turmoil? And you have to show that physically and emotionally and musically, and it all has to come together and weave into this moment, and you only have 12 minutes to do that. And so it's a super intricate but super important thing to be able to mesh all of them together. And so being able to grab things from childhood and past memories that you had and say, how do we bring this to life?
And really, it's the foundation of you understanding choreography, which was going to become such a big part of your life, and you didn't even know it.
100%.
Yeah.
I tell people, I'm like, I'm not a dancer, I'm a mover. But then you realize,
you are a dancer.
No, I am a dancer.
You
and
are
so
a dancer.
It's how you speak about yourself and how you speak things over yourself that then portray and go into who you are and what you do. I'm a mover. I move well, but actually, no, I'm a dancer.
Yeah.
I may not be this ballerina that does this. I could learn if I put my mind to it, but to say that I'm not a dancer is not true. I am a dancer. I just may be other things for other people in other times. But for myself, I can say, no, I am a dancer. I have been dancing my whole entire life, doing different things, whether in my living room with my family, watching a music video, whether on a marching band field, or now whether on a Broadway stage.
I think it's so important for our listeners to understand that, because again, we're coming back to these boxes that people put around you. And I know for myself as an artist, and I'm hearing you say for you as an artist, like really one of the breakthroughs is getting to the point where you realize that those are definitions others have put upon you and not necessarily your abilities or capabilities. And we have so many great artists who come into their prime and, the latter part of their life, because for some it takes longer to get there. So it's amazing that you had that realization.
Yeah, and just the understanding of what that means for you. Because in the grand scheme of things, we learn this once we start auditioning more and more and more. You're going to hear more no's than you hear yeses. That's the reality.
Yeah.
But just because you hear a no doesn't mean that you're not or you're not capable. It just means in that moment, in that time, it wasn't working. So when I go audition as a 5-year-old to be in this and everyone's accepted and everyone's like, hey, everyone gets a blue ribbon, everyone gets a participation, you think, oh, I'm limitless. I can do whatever. But then you move into middle school or high school and they're like, oh, you don't make the team because of this, this, and this. You're not on the dance team, or you're not on the basketball team, or you're not on.
It's actually awful, right?
Yeah, but it's this understanding of, okay, I can deal with that, but society puts on you like all of these other things. But I also look at that and say, man, no, we need to teach our kids. I have a 6-year-old and we teach him, guess what? It's not a participation. You don't win everything. You don't get everything that you want. That's not life. That's the reality. But we can work through what that looks like. If you want to do this, he's doing Taekwondo right now. If you want to do that, you may not win your sparring match every time. That doesn't mean you suck at sparring. That just means you need to get better because this other person's better than you. And that's okay. But that doesn't mean you suck. That doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means we need to work a little bit harder so that we can get better. Because you're going to then defeat them. But guess what? There's still going to be somebody better than you because you have a master at that dojo who's better than you. Like, there's always going to be some aspiration to move forward.
Yeah.
But just because it's not successful in this moment doesn't mean you're a failure. It doesn't mean this isn't for you.
So just for the artists out there listening, I think it's so important to know that just because you've got to know, especially in your childhood, there's so much behind those no's that you don't know about. Don't let it stop you from kind of chasing your dreams. I want to touch really quickly upon then singing in church. And when you look at now the roles you're playing and the things you're doing, how do you see that church background preparing you, or actually more importantly, changing the way that you approach some of these roles?
A lot of different ways. One, people don't know this. I hate talking in public. I hate public speaking. I'm very nervous. It's one of those things that, sorry, let me change my language.
I love that. Speak it into existence, Darian. Speak it.
It used to make me very uncomfortable to speak in front of large groups of people.
Yes.
Being a worship pastor, I would love, I don't care to sing in front of large crowds. Sing in front of football stadiums, 80,000 people. Sing in front of churches, thousands of people. I was a part of a mega church. Like that's normal to me to sing in front of people, but then to speak is a whole different aspect. And so I had to process why those two things were different. And it's when I'm singing, even if I'm singing my own song, I'm still singing something and portraying something. When I'm speaking my own words, and therefore other people can then judge me on those words that I'm speaking. And so for me, it was coming to the realization of, man, it's okay that I am worried and concerned about what people are thinking. Now, I need to process through that and then figure out those that really love me, love me. Whether I say something stupid or whether I say something profoundly amazing. But guess what? I need to make sure that I am not basing my feelings and emotions on all these other people. That's the reality.
You came to the pinnacle of actually getting this great role on Broadway in The Lion King. And I believe it was right after that you had just started your role and you had a knee injury. And I personally was a competitive dancer, and I had a knee injury right before my audition for musical theater school coming out of high. And I know for me, it really just shaped my resilience and my drive to do better. And I would love you to share with us specifically, not necessarily how it affected your life, because I know you've talked about that before, but how it affected kind of your drive behind your storytelling and the emotions you took away from that injury that may be additive now to what you put into your characters and how you pursue your career.
Yeah, I would say purpose. It comes down to purpose. I was cast in September of 2019 in the show. I ended up leaving Kentucky, leaving everything that I've always known because I never thought I would leave Kentucky, and joining the tour. Debuted in October, as in the ensemble understudying Simba, got to debut Simba in November, and that's where I tore my meniscus. So I ended up leaving the show, not even performing 2 months. Super mad. I was like, God, why are you going to now take me?
Give me a taste.
Yeah. Why are you going to take me from this? Why are you going to take me from Kentucky? The story was crazy in itself.
Yeah.
And bring me to Broadway, and then all of a sudden take me out of Broadway just randomly, like with a knee injury. I'm like, I want to be here. I'm excited to be here. I'm working hard. Hindsight, pandemic hits. And so I am now then so mad at God, so frustrated. But then in hindsight, I look back at it and I say, man, God, you took care of me actually. Because during the whole entire pandemic, I was on medical leave. I was taking care of my family, and me were financially and spiritually and emotionally taken care of during the whole pandemic. And I know some people that really struggled during the pandemic. And so I look back and I'm like, man, it's a blessing for us. But man, now that then shaped how I then go back into after the pandemic and then getting the role of Simba. And then now when I step back into it, I was grateful before, but I'm more grateful now knowing, man, I've had time to recoup. I've had time to recover. I've had time to train even more. I've had more intentionality.
It was
purpose.
like you got the time. You got the time to prep craft.
And so now that I step into the role, with this whole new perspective, because it could be my last time that I do the show. We don't know what the world is going to do and shut down pandemic-wise. I don't know what my body is going to do with my knee. And so it's like, man, this may be the last time that I get to perform this show. And so because of that, 8 shows a week, it doesn't matter. I step into each show with this vibrancy, with this excitement, with this understanding of, man, we need to create magic. And we want to create magic because this is the only time this show is ever going to be put on at this moment in time with this audience, with this cast. And guess what? It's going to be special. And so I have to make sure that it's special for me, and I have to make sure it's special for them.
Let's talk a little bit about these characters. So other than Simba, you've also played Jesus and Jesus Christ Superstar. You've also played Seaweed and Newsies. You've got a lot of things that you're working on right now. These are very different and epic characters to embody. So when you are going into building a character, what's your process? What are the things that are going through your head, especially something like playing Jesus or playing even Simba, right? These are like larger than life characters. So how are you personally, what is the organic way that kind of surfaced to build these characters, especially as someone who hadn't performed a lot on stage or done a lot of acting?
No, that's real. I'll say this first. It goes with, without saying, all these roles that I'm doing have already been done before. And so because of that, there has been groundwork that has been laid. And so for me, I have not originated a role yet. Soon to be. Yet. And so because of that, I want to honor the history and the heritage of each part that I'm doing. So I want to make sure that I am being respectful of the people that did originate those roles and the directors that did originate the vision, and making sure that I see what that is. But also understanding I'm an artist. We are ever evolving and changing culture. And so making sure that I'm adding me into the story as well. And
so adding you into the story, what is that?
Yes. So when I look at Jesus Christ Superstar, that was the first regional theater role that I was ever cast in. And I didn't audition for it. They literally found me and they said, you embody...
Can we just talk about how insane your story is? I mean, it is such a testament to the idea that putting good into the world and belief and just honing your craft is enough. And I love that. I love that people will get to hear your story and do hear your story and understand that sometimes it's hard work, dedication, and belief.
Yes, 100%.
Continue, Jesus Christ Superstar.
So I was an ordained pastor in my town, and the director said, hey, there have been a million different Jesus Christ Superstars put on, and a lot of the Jesuses are stoic. And that's a beautiful way, and that's a beautiful portrayal. We want our Jesus to be as real as possible. We want people to see that our Jesus and say, man, that's a Jesus that I can see myself following, not only just following, but like to know. And so we started out the show, and I was a part of the dance number in the opening sequence. I've never seen a Jesus Christ Superstar where the Jesus is actually dancing. Yeah. And so it was one of those things of like a tangible, real Jesus. If we want to walk like Jesus walked and we want to do what he did and we want to portray and convey who Jesus was, he was among the people. He was in everyday life. He was around everyone.
So this is a character choice you made?
It was a character choice that we made together. And so they cast me as that because of that. But then also for me, I want to embody Jesus in a tangible way. I want people to experience Jesus. And I say this phrase coming from someone else, if I am the only Jesus that somebody ever sees, if no one ever opens up their Bible and they see me, I want them to experience the real Jesus that I know and love and serve. And so by portraying him on stage as someone who can dance, someone who can sing, someone who is real and tangible and I can grab onto, that's the way that we wanted our Jesus to be portrayed.
Tell me a little bit, for me, as someone who trained from when I was a kid, I know that something that came up for me was that sometimes learning from teachers was something that created more blockages in me than my natural talent. And sometimes it was additive. And especially when you're a kid and you're training voice or acting, you are you're very susceptible to whatever the feedback is. But you got to experience some of this as an adult. So candidly, like, what has your experience been with training and building story? Do you feel that training always is additive? Because you get to look at it from the lens of an adult, so you know better.
Yes.
Parts of you know better.
Yes.
Right? So you understand this is a person. They are giving me feedback. That feedback is positive, negative, whatever it is. Tell us, just so other storytellers can understand and get some perspective, especially if they've been training since kids, on what that feels like to get feedback real time and learn as an adult in this space.
Yeah, because I didn't train as a kid, as an adult walking into it, sometimes you can feel like you have imposter syndrome. And it's the reality of, man, this person's been dancing since they were 4. I just started dancing a couple years ago and now I'm doing a chorus line. And I'm like, how in the world did that happen? Part of it's luck. I wouldn't say luck. Part of it's opportunity and just like the blessing of right time, right place. And then other time it's you're ordained to be there at that point in time. But for me, I look at, my training ground was life. So my training ground was going to school to be an educator and figuring out things. My training ground was in school teaching after school high school band while I was in college. And so I was a paraeducator for 6 years and I taught special ed. And so part of that is, how do you teach a student that doesn't want to be in class, that doesn't want to be in school, that may have some obstacles in life? How do you teach them a math problem? How do you teach them English? How do you, all of these different things? You have to be creative. And so that was my training ground to figure out how to tell a story and how to teach in a unique way. I bring that to the stage with how I'm telling Simba. I bring that to the stage with how I want my movement to be and what I want people to feel and see.
Educators are such great storytellers. I'm glad you brought that up because I think, for our audience listening, a lot of them are probably educators, people who present in different ways. And I think it's important for people to know, as people who are core storytellers and are defined as that in our job, I see storytellers everywhere. I see storytellers everywhere, and the show showcases storytellers from all different walks of life because when we are in the pursuit of what is a great story, those stories come from these other storytellers that live within our communities, and teachers are definitely one of the greatest storytellers that
100%. And I would say even after getting life training or on the job training, if you would say, with life in terms of storytelling, in terms of training, now that I'm an adult, now that I'm in it, I get training now. I have an acting coach, I have a voice coach, I have a dance coach. It's one of those things that I now put in the work that other people did beforehand just to make sure that I'm honing my craft. I have a God-given talent. I get that. I understand that. I don't throw that to the wayside or I don't overlook that. But also, now that I've been given the opportunity, I don't want to waste that opportunity.
Sure.
And so I know that I need more training. I know that I can always be a learner and get better and better. And so that's what I'm doing.
So tell us a little bit. I know you're working on your first EP.
I am.
And so now your storytelling, my opinion, is across 3 mediums because you have what you've been doing musical theater-wise, which stage performance is something totally different, I know from personal experience. And then you have what you're doing in the recording booth, which is going to be much more intimate, and it's a very different type of storytelling through music. And then you have acting, and acting is completely different. So when you think about these 3 different mediums of storytelling and how you embody each of them, what is your approach to each, and how does it differ?
Ooh, that's a great question.
Thanks.
No, that was...
We can discuss it, by the way. Like I've had not your level of experience in these spaces, but I've definitely, I grew up as a musical theater kid, thought I would do it for college if I hadn't broken my knee. Was on stage all the time, and then I've recorded and written music for a bunch of our shows, and I know how different that is, and I know how acting can be totally different. So let's just discuss it. But I would love for people to understand, because it's such a different preparation.
Yes.
It's such a different preparation. So let's start with musical theater. So where you're prepping for and the singing in musical theater, you're prepping for singing on stage. What's the internal process there?
The internal process, I think, for me, is always, what is the story behind the song? How does this fit into the show? What in the show are you saying, both with words, but then also with emotion? Because we always want to take people on a journey, regardless. And so what is that journey? But also realizing, man, am I doing this journey by myself? Or do I have scene partners even in the song? Or as I'm singing the song, are there people around me? And so you're thinking of all of these different things, because even though we're singing the song, on stage, there are all these different things going on. And in the house, there are all these different things going on. And so how do you bring all of those together in the prep work and making sure that all of these things happen and come together for one succinct moment?
And then let's take people into then you break the song, and now you're acting. You're acting on stage. And that is a totally different headspace as well. I know when you're singing on stage, the projection and the emotional projection that needs to happen is
has to read to the back of the theater.
It's a very expansive thing.
Yes.
But then when you reel it back to the acting moments, that's less, although you're still projecting, that's less of that, I need to explode into a million parts across the stage.
Yeah.
So what is that?
So moving from exuding so much energy and projection to the back of the theater to then sitting on the stage with your scene partner and making sure that you're seen and they're heard and they're seen, and making sure it is a communicative back and forth, hey, we are in this together, versus I'm going to say my line and wait for you, and then I'm going to say my line again. It's no, I am actively listening, because you may say a line in a completely different way, and then how I react to that is a very genuine thing. And so making sure, man, 8 shows a week, 6 days a week, we won't ever do the show the same way. That's the reality in musical theater. You won't. And everyone's like, oh, but you tell the same story 8 shows a week. You have the same act, you have the same cast. It's yeah, but you have swing outs, you have people that are sick, you have subs, you have all of these different things that are going on. And the audiences are different. They react to you different. The houses are different. So emotions change. What you did in your day from waking up until the moment you step into the theater can then shift and change where your heart is.
Yeah.
Hearing great news, hearing bad news, maybe getting just different things that happen in life that happens when you step into the theater. We want to be a reprieve for people for a few hours to not think about the world, and just to be in a moment of just bliss and in a moment of just freedom.
Has everyone disappeared at this point, or are you aware of the audience?
It's a thing. It's a yes and, because they disappear because you want to make sure that you're in scene with your partner and in your cast, but also they're there because you have little kids that are crying, or you have little kids that they're so invested into the story that you're saying. You have adults that then chuckle because there's an inside joke, or there's something that happened with them and something hits an emotional string and they hear, and then that breath that they give you then all of a sudden excites you and rejuvenates you and gives you a new breath to say oh, now I'm going to deliver this line this way. And so all of the things are intricate, and they all inform one another.
Yeah. I personally used to just black out everybody in a stage, but then you have these moments where they react to you and you almost want to react back. Do you think that you will miss that if you move more into television and film? I know you've got some big things coming up. what is it about that live audience that energizes you? And what do you think that experience, or I know you've experienced it, what is that experience without them then moving away from live theater?
I think it's immediate gratification without that being a negative thing. It's the immediate feedback that you get right away from what you say or what you do. But also sometimes the audiences aren't reacting in a manner of another audience or the way that you think they would or should. And so you also learn already, man, I can get this immediate response, but also the response may not happen. And when the response doesn't happen, how have you trained to make sure that yourself are giving you the informed decision to then move forward in the way that you know the story needs to be told. And I think with film and TV, that's what it is. You're saying a joke and no one's in the audience to laugh because there's no one there.
Yeah.
And so just to know and understand, man, I'm going to say this and like I know the response or I know how I'm supposed to react, or in a serious moment, a somber moment, you may not have a sigh or a breath can do so much. And so whether you're with a scene partner or whether you have to take that breath for yourself, just making sure that you know and understand where you are on that front.
So we had one more format of storytelling, and that's you recording your EP. And so now you're in a recording booth and it's very intimate. And tell us what prepping for that process has been like.
I think the collaboration of figuring out what is the vision of it is the most important. My wife and I were talking about it actually on the car ride over here because it's a beautiful thing of there's so many artists and so many forms and so many different genres of music. And it's like, well, what do you want to say? What do you want to be about? And for me, it's the inspiration. For me, it's the motivation and the excitement of joy and just sharing joy. And the understanding of, man, if you're choosing joy is a choice. So you can be happy, you can be sad, but you can choose joy. The moment can be horrifically awful, but you can still choose joy in that moment. It can be on a mountaintop, but you're still choosing joy. And so making sure people understand the hope and the love and the joy that comes with the choices that we get to make and what that looks like in life. And so the music that I want to create, yes, it's Jesus inspired because he's all about he's all about what I do and where I am. But also, like you can spread Jesus' love and joy without smacking people over the head saying, Jesus, 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 Jesus. You can just be and understand that the light that you have inside of you can shine bright in the dark places.
For me, getting into a studio and having a mic in front of my face, there is definitely a different way that you have to also approach the vocalization.
Yes.
And how you are actually singing into the mic. And that was a huge learning curve for me because I was trained on stages. I remember when I first got into a recording booth. How do you find in terms of like putting feeling into your words and your songs and your phrases? How do you find that transition from being on a stage where it's really about projecting and going all out and making sure that they feel at your core, what you're trying to put into the world? How does that change when you get into a studio booth, you're recording your EP and you're doing something? I know what it feels like, but can you explain to the audience what the difference is?
Yeah, for me, it's figuring out the ambiance for you. I have to set the stage wherever I am recording. And I know that my producer or the musical director, normally when we're doing it, it's, man, those consonants are really, really harsh right now. Like, you're not on stage. I don't need this. I need you to soften this up or do this. And so how do you then shift and say, like, man, I'm saying this because I want this to be so intentional, or I want somebody to feel this? How do you make them feel it? Well, maybe for you, it's taking a step back, getting your mind, getting your heart wrapped around this emotion that you want, whether it's love, whether it's pain, whether it's hope, whether it's joy, whether it's this feeling that you need to create. How do you create that feeling for yourself? What makes you feel that? And creating it in that moment, so then there can then transfer into the mic, into the studio, so that you're creating that ambiance around you, so that it comes out of your heart and into that mic.
I know that you had in your mind and that you were going to do something more like a Hamilton type role, and then you end up playing Simba for 2 years. Simba has been an iconic character for so many. We started the show by talking about that. I just want to know from you, what did that character teach you? And what do you think that massive legacy is about?
I I have been so moved by doing it that I didn't realize that I could be. You think about the show and you're like, oh, it's a Disney show. It's going to be just easy and fun and lighthearted and all these things. But then you realize and you walk through what the story of Simba is really saying and what it means. But then also you look at the other parts of the story that then play into, man, he thought for the longest time that he killed his dad, and the weight that meant, and how he was so scared. So he ran from his true calling in life. And man, how many of us feel that we need to be doing something? We talked about this earlier when we were little kids. We have this dream, or we have this vision, or we have this want and desire, but yet we walk away because a situation, a circumstance, somebody says something or does something, and then all of a sudden it gets stripped away from us. And we think, man, we can never go back there, or man, we can never do this, or man, we've gone so far away, we can't come back. And it's like, no, we can.
Yeah.
And so like that has also inspired and moved not only me on stage to then speak life into people to say, man, you can always come back. But that also has informed the EP and like figuring out what that looks like and what that means. Like giving hope to somebody to say, man, you've not gone too far away. You've not been such a bad friend or such a bad sibling or such a bad child or such a bad coworker.
That you can't come back.
That you can't come back and say, I'm sorry, or this is what I was going through, or this is the real aspect of it. And because of that, it's, man, that's all people want. People want you to be real. People want to know what's really going on, and then we can move forward with that.
I'm going to enter a rapid fire segment. We went a little bit long, so you may have to go and watch this on the video if you're listening out here. But I asked you a couple questions before you showed up. First of all, I got you your favorite drink. Bang Blue Raz.
Blue Raz.
What's this moment about? Where did you find this? How did this help you
out? Just on the road, a little kick me start.
Yeah.
Just moving and shaking.
No story behind the Blue Raz?
No story behind it.
Okay.
I used to do other energy drinks, and I have found the flavor of this and the energy of this is spot on.
I'm going to play something for you.
Okay.
This is your favorite song.
It is.
Why? What does this song remind you of?
Oh, a lot of things. One, I believe Michael Jackson is utterly amazing and gifted and talented. And I think just transcends so many different things. Even to this day, people are talking and listening. There's the MJ musical that is unbelievably amazing. But this song, it takes me back to not only my childhood, but I was in a cover band for 7 years before I started anything. And this was one of my favorite songs to perform. And it just got people on the dance floor. It made people feel great. It was just a great song.
Yeah.
It
For
is
me,
a great
it takes
song.
it takes me back to that moment in, was it Step Up? What was the name of the ballet movie?
Oh, yes, with Channing Tatum and
Jodie in it.
yes.
And she does that dance. If you guys remember the reference, we'll try to cut it in, but she does that dance. And I spent the next couple years dancing to Michael Jackson and trying to recreate that dance. It was just so epic, like rock ballet. Yeah, man.
Oh.
So this segment is really about a character analysis of who you are. So
Okay.
we're going to do rapid fire questions.
All right.
And I want you to just answer the first thing that comes to your mind.
Okay.
When I say the word home, what do you think of?
Jess and Titus.
Your son and your wife. When I say the word heaven, what do you think of?
Jesus.
Jesus. When I say the word hell, what do you think of?
Don't want to be there.
What is the food that you find most comforting?
Pizza.
Pizza. Why pizza?
I don't know. That's the first thing. Domino's Pizza. It's the first thing that came to my mind.
Okay. What sound makes you smile?
The laughter.
How do you define love?
Community.
How do you define success?
That's a great question. Success. Contentment.
How do you define failure?
Regret.
Do you believe in magic?
100%.
100%. I love that. Second chances?
Yes.
Love at first sight?
I laugh because me and my wife went on a blind date. That's how we met. So I say yes.
We got Jess and Titus in the studio listening, which was such a treat for me. I love the magic of little children, and I love that you bring him around to things so he can experience it with his senses, because re-experience it through their senses is a whole other
100%.
whole other
I tell
thing.
people if he can't be a part of it, I don't want to be there.
I love that. Without considering time, ability, or money as an obstacle, what is the one thing you've always wanted to do or learn?
Wow. I would say Taekwondo.
Taekwondo.
Yeah.
Let's go.
I know. It's
I want to learn Taekwondo. Let's go. My mom and dad didn't let us leave the house until we were at least green belts.
work.
Yeah, but I couldn't do anything now. But I did learn at one point. In order to leave his house, I had to become a green belt.
That is awesome.
It was a whole thing. What would you like to create, or who would you like to create a story with or for in the future? First person that comes to mind.
Michael B. Jordan.
Michael B. Jordan. What word best describes you as a storyteller?
Joyful.
Joyful. And what inspires or drives you?
Love.
Finally, Darian, what is your favorite story?
Man, I would probably say the story of Jesus, but I'm going to go on and say the story of David.
I love that. Darian, thank you so much for being with us on Storyteller Studio.
Thank you for having me.
And I hope that everyone listening tries to catch you in The Lion King.